Hello, welcome to Girls in Film. This is our second event of the afternoon. I'm super excited for this one. It is our open mic pitch. So today we have 6 filmmakers who'll be getting up, pitching their ideas to our commissioners here. My name's Anita, and I'll be moderating the conversation. So yeah, without further ado, I'm gonna hand over to our commissioners to just do a brief introduction, and then we'll get started. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Katia. I work at The Guardian, where I work as an executive producer on documentaries. But I also work across what we call news features, which our documentaries are about 20 minutes, and our news features are more reactive and between 5 to 10 minutes. But people pitch on both. So yeah, that's me.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Alice. I work for Film 4, where I'm a development and production exec. So Film 4, I'm sure you know, is funded by Channel 4. Stop privatisation. Thanks. I've totally lost my train of thought now. But I basically work across the slate of feature films. We occasionally do short films as well for the filmmakers that are already on our development slate, working across features at all stages of development and production. I also work across talking to it more, okay, and documentary features as well, I was just saying.
Hi, I'm Jordan. I'm worried about my microphone making funny noises. I work for Film London, and I used to work with Alice. I'm so pleased to see her again. What's that? Closer. It sounds really like it. Anyway, sorry. Shout if you can't hear me. So Film London does lots of things. My department looks after helping filmmakers get into the industry. I have 2 BFI Network talent execs on my team. They run their own slates, but I can sort of speak for them sometimes. We also deliver the production finance market. If you're trying to finance a feature film, you might want to know about the PFM opens for applications in May this month, a couple of weeks' time, and happens in October. We also have a similar market called Upstream, which is for early stage IP. So they're my sort of lenses for today.
Hi. I did not expect that. I'm Sylvia, and I'm a video commissioner for Dazed magazine. I'm sure you've heard that name. It's a youth Gen Z publication. We do everything from short form, social content, work with brands, but also with the editorial team. So a lot of print, covers. I mean, the last one was 2 issues before was Rihanna, and with loads of talents and celebrities, but as well as we focus on storytelling, on organizations or subcultures that usually don't really get told often.
Amazing. Thank you so much. Super excited to have you here. Okay, shall we get started? Our first filmmaker is Cassia. Am I saying it right? Sorry. No. How do I say it? I should have asked you before. Kasha.
Soft sound. Kind of like cashew nuts.
Okay. Yeah. All right, Kasha. So if you want to present, you can stand there and just I will give you, so you have 5 minutes, and I'll just give you a little signal when there's 1 minute left. Okay. All right.
Hi everyone, thank you so much Girls in Film for creating an opportunity like this. It's such an exciting panel, but after Googling you guys for last week, I am so nervous. But to balance the scale here a little bit, let me tell you about myself. My name is Kasia, kind of like cashew nut. I come from Poland, hence the name, and I'm a writer-director with 7 years of production management experience. Next slide, please. My 6th short film, Maeve in the Dark, is currently in the festival circuit, and I'm incredibly proud to say that we already screened at BIFA and BAFTA qualifying festivals, amongst other that focus on genre, female narratives, and LGBTQ visibility. But what I'm really proud of is the team that has emerged from making this film. Next slide, please.
We've been kind of collaborating ever since filming it last year. We care deeply about the same issues, and we just want to keep making films about them together forever. So from the minds and hearts of this diverse, inclusive, and female-led team come Dry Pitches. That was really good. It's a short film, a story of two women at the end of the world saying their final goodbyes as one of them decides not to join the other at the last remaining human settlement amidst the global drought. The one who wants to go doesn't even want to think about it. She reminisces over their wild friendship and the stuff they've done in the shade of the peach trees. And what else future can hold for them together. Whereas the other one, who, as we find out when mid-conversation she starts overheating, next slide, is actually a robot. Ta-da! She has kind of come to terms with the fact that the peaches have dried, and that even if humanity manages not to go extinct, the one human that she really cares about will eventually leave her behind. So much for best friends forever, right? But that is just the truth, and she wants a head start getting used to not having her best friend around, which is when, next slide, she breaks up with her best friend. Sad. Next slide, please. Yeah, thank you. So on the surface, this is a very budget-friendly short, two-hander set in one kitchen. We're kind of currently in prep, wanting to film in August, given my DOP's availability, and we've already secured 40% discount from Feral Equipment and 60% discount from Asimov Post-Production, which is fantastic, but we're still seeking further funding to cover, location fees, catering, production design, and obviously crew payments. From a more pragmatic perspective, this film is also a chance for us to test things out as we prepare for our collective debut feature. Next slide. Very quickly, this is a conversation for an arm of the clock, obviously. Jordan, Alice, hi. And any producers in the room who are into feminist sci-fi, call me up. But next slide, please. Essentially, what we're trying to do through Dry Pitches is work out a way to bring that outside world, which is as toxic as the central relationship that's been kept out of the fridge way past its use by date, into the kitchen. Through, obviously, production and costume design, hair and makeup, VFX, sound, and crucially, the light. We want the daylight sipping in through the window to be naturalistic, familiar, yet uncanny, to really drive in the point how close we already are to the climate disaster that is in the background of the film. And yes, for me personally, that was so good. For me personally, the key challenge as a director is in dramatizing the conversation, because that's all the action we're getting, really. And creating coverage that brings the audience in. So my current plan, which is very much open to feedback, is to start with those kind of balanced two shots that frame our protagonists in the middle of the frame. And then we start to let the eye lines slip, the composition falls off center, and gradually we transition into a game of over the shoulders, where we get to play with different focal lengths to kind of contract and expand the space between our characters as their dynamic changes as well. Eventually, they will turn their back on each other and to the camera, but through certain moments of forced perspective, will also show that fleeting instances of them still longing for each other, and maybe there's still a chance for them to mend things. But unfortunately, eventually it will all disintegrate into singles, and especially those in which the character is on the side of frame where usually the shoulder of the other one is, because they're really not leaving any space for each other in this conversation. And isn't that sort of the truth? All we ever see on the screen is best friends forever, ride or die, Thelmas and Louises. But in real life, actually, the kind of most formative female friendships sometimes just fall apart. And because they're not romantic relationships, we don't have the same sort of social code for breaking them up. And thus we get no closure. And yes, I'm exorcising some personal demons here, but I'm willing to bet that it sounds familiar to at least some women in the room here tonight. Which is why I want to bring Dry Pitches and our stories to the screen and start a conversation about more forgiving, healthier models. And I really hope you will join the revolution.
Thank you. Well done. Do you have any feedback? So I'm going to just come to each of you and ask you to give Kasia some feedback. Yes. That was amazing, by the way. You did really well, super fast, amazing.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, it was a brilliant job. So impressed with your confidence, even though you said you were nervous and you like covered everything. I would kind of want to know about the project. If there's one like thing that I would maybe tweak, I'd talk about your feature idea at the end, as a kind of like, this is why I want to go on to do in the future. But for me, like, I mean, I said at the beginning, like, you really showed how your short idea ties into the feature idea, and for the short films that we fund, that's kind of a question that we would ask. So we can talk later. But yeah, brilliant job, and you just got across everything. I feel like I can't fault it, really. And you're really engaging and friendly and funny, so it was great.
Yeah, I would totally agree with Alice. I think the only thing that you didn't say that we would ask you, and obviously these pitches are always a conversation starter, so it would be a question, is how much you need, particularly for the short film. I don't know if you've applied for the BFI network.
Yes.
Well done. Well, hopefully you'll get some good news soon.
Please.
But even if not, there are other funds opening up, and I think it's a question that I've had multiple times this week. People are like, I've just missed the deadline, or who else is opening? So stay in touch with all of the social media. Like people like Film London and BFI Network are going to be pointing towards other funds this summer. But definitely, I think you should apply to PFM. We would love to see your project coming into the market submissions this year. Good luck. Yeah, as Alice said, well done for going first. You came across really well. I think the main thing I always say is that people forget to introduce themselves and their team up front, and you did that really nicely. Those laurels look good. Hats off.
I just want to echo these two as well. Your enthusiasm was really amazing and inspiring. My sort of critical feedback, I suppose, would be to slow down. And I know there's like so much stressful to squeeze in, like, oh my God, 5 minutes, you got to like go. But in the interest of clarity, and not, we can only take in so much at a time. So I would maybe strip out if there's anything that you can strip out and just make your message really laser focused. That would be my feedback. I also had a question of what your time frame was. I know you said you were thinking of shooting in August, but have you got a launch sort of period in mind?
Well, so the date in August stems from the fact that my DOP, whom I love deeply, and she's the only DOP I will ever work with. Well, that's not true, but she told me to say that. So she's currently studying at the NFTS, so obviously she only has weekends and it's all quite tense. She does have the summer holiday in August, but it's also when she's going to see her family in Taiwan, who she hasn't seen since the beginning of the pandemic. So kind of the August bank holiday is really the only time in the year so far that we're going to get 1 day to pre-light and 2 days to shoot. So that's our plan. But that being said, she's fantastic and the whole team is so good, and we've because we're also planning to shoot a music video in a couple of weeks. So if we need to pull it off in 1 weekend, if that means money, then we'll do it.
I've got nothing to say. I mean, this is great. I'm really excited to see this come out. I guess, except Days, we don't really do short films and fiction, but one thing I think I might have missed, but it's like the tone of the dialogue, because obviously it's set in one location, so production is amazing because it means less money, but at the same time it's just like how the script will come out. So that's something I was a bit curious about, and maybe get to like read it later.
Oh yeah, I'll send it. But also the team here knows that there is a bit more kind of longer pitch deck with more slides and more visuals and more of everything, which I think shows it better. I just tried to already do the stripping. I already stripped so much. So yeah, that's there as well. If anybody's interested to see it, I can send it to you literally right now.
I just thought of something else as well. Like I loved how you talked about the cinematography of it, and obviously like your director's vision is really important, but I guess I also wanted to know, but I think it's good to leave the people you're pitching to wanting to know more, but I wanted to know like who the two women were, like more about their specific characters. So yeah, maybe not necessarily something for the pitch, but or maybe it could be there instead of the kind of shots and framing, and you could talk about that later on. But yeah, I mean, you left us wanting more, which is a good thing.
Well, why don't I catch you afterwards and I'll tell you all about my characters.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Kasha. And thank you for some really insightful advice there. We're going to go to our next filmmaker, Rebecca with No Filter. Okay.
Should I stand here or? Ooh, okay. Oh yeah, sorry. Hi guys. This is my first pitch, so hopefully it'll be okay. And I'm Rebecca. I'm an artist filmmaker with synesthesia, and I'm pitching my short film No Filter, which is the first film to accurately show what life with synesthesia is like, specifically dancing with synesthesia. And next slide, thank you. So I don't know how much you know about synesthesia, but it basically is a medical condition that causes an overlapping of the senses. There are some examples of synesthesia on the board. No two synesthetes have the same experience. For example, I see my name Rebecca as red, but my friend with synesthesia sees it as yellow. So everyone has a completely different experience. And some people have chromesthesia, thank you, which is where sounds and music create beautiful, colourful patterns. And for me, this is the most distracting and the most in-your-face kind of synesthesia, because if there was a song playing right now, I'd be just looking at the colourful pattern floating above everyone's heads. So it can be very distracting. But at the same time, when I'm in a club or if I'm in a music festival and everyone around me is really into the music and enjoying, it's the one time that I can drop my mask and just really react to the synesthesia and enjoy it. So, oh yeah, I forgot to say, there's a kind of classic neurodiverse survival skill called masking, and that's where you kind of hide your true reactions to things to kind of come across as normal. So yeah, I do that a lot. And this, when I'm actually dancing, it's one of the first times that I can be truly myself and I feel free. So this is what I want to communicate in my film. And because synesthesia is kind of somewhere between reality and unreality, I'm making a hybrid documentary. So it's going to be based on my life, based on my experiences, but it's going to have untruthful elements as well. The story is, thank you, the story is about myself and my friend Hyogo, who is also an artist with synesthesia, and it's based on our real conversations, our real weird in-jokes, like feeling beige or someone being so seven. It makes sense to us, I promise. But we're going to cast actors as Rebecca and as Hyogo, and we're going to have them interacting with people as they go through a chaotic London full of colours and stimulus on the way to my friend's silent disco in the forest. Next slide, please. And so the main theme of the film is going from discordant chaos to beautiful harmony, because when we get to the forest, the colours of the music, the movements of the dancers, and the forest location are suddenly all much more complementary and harmonious than just crazy London with everything going on all the time. So Rebecca and Hyogo can finally stop masking, they can finally just be themselves and interact with people in a more authentic way. And next slide, please. So the film's going to fuse documentary footage of these actors as us interacting with normal people, and just they will have studied our characters really well and be acting as us. So it's going to be the documentary footage with CGI synesthesia effects over the top. If there are any CGI artists out there, or if you guys know anyone who can create very organic kind of effects that look almost like light or ink, the closest example I can find is from Disney's Soul. That's the best example of synesthesia I've ever seen. If anyone can do that, please let me know, because then you can elevate this film and it'll be truly groundbreaking. And next slide. So we're thinking that the film will appeal to people interested in neurodiversity in music. It'll play equally well as an art film in galleries and exhibitions, as well as online platforms and film festivals. The main goal of the film is to promote understanding of synesthesia and neurodiversity in general, and to create more compassion around this topic. And the second goal is to, my brain's gone blank. The second goal is to make people question if there is really a normal perception of reality at all, or if everyone's completely different anyway. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done. That was really interesting and insightful. Thank you for sharing. Does anyone have any advice or feedback for Rebecca?
Yeah, I could kick this one off. Firstly, I've always been obsessed with synesthesia and slightly jealous of people who have it because it sounds kind of amazing. This isn't necessarily something that we would have a fund for. The BFI network is quite about narrative filmmaking, but depending on exactly what the script was, we could talk about that next year. But I think obviously there's I can see huge audiences for it, and there's Film London has another department called Flame In, which is a Film London Artist Moving Image Network. I don't know if you know them, but I think they have a deadline that's open at the moment, and you might want to check that one out. There's also a network called Displa, which if you haven't been in touch with them, you should talk to them, because I don't think they have funds, but they definitely have support and could be useful when you launch your film, just to sort of get the sort of awareness of it out. But my question for you is whether you've thought about an interactive version of this, like is there life beyond the rectangular screen? Because there's a film that we were involved with some time ago, actually in Alice's time, called Notes on Blindness, and they had an amazing VR experience where you could experience the world as he saw it, and I just wondered whether there's another layer, and there's some companies that you might be able to talk to create that, so I'd like to follow up with you afterwards. We can connect you to them, if that helps.
I just wanted to feed in and say thank you so much. I thought that was really clear. And I definitely think that some of the themes you're exploring there, synesthesia, masking especially, are very interesting, potentially for a Guardian film. But I wanted to interrogate a little bit more your decision not to include your own voice, because I know that you said you wanted this CGI effect and you wanted actors playing you and your friend Hyogo. But I wondered if there was a world in which your own voice was present, because I think there could be some real value in that. And I wondered if you'd ever seen a film about the experience of being deaf that Dorothy Allen Pickard did. And it's really fascinating. I'll have to share it with you. But it's a really interesting interplay of someone telling their own story about how they sort of started going clubbing and experiencing clubbing with deafness. Yeah. And then there's some visual motifs, but the first person voice is really important in that. So could you speak a little bit to that, if you would consider your own voice in there?
So the actors, basically, I'm trying to show my world as accurately as possible. So that's why the CGI will be as accurate as possible. But I think that no one can truly step into someone else's shoes. So even if it's me on the screen, it'll be a reflection of me. So that's why I want the actors to play me. And then there's a question about how much is real, how much is not real. But I have an idea that maybe, because it will be a documentary, hybrid, maybe when Rebecca's getting ready for the party, she'll be talking to the camera while doing her makeup in the mirror. And she'll be, it'll be from conversations the actors had with me. So it'll be kind of my voice, but refracted.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Yeah, I actually thought about that as well, because I was like, I really want to see you and Hyogo in there in some ways, because there's so much film, well, not in film, but like element to it. Like there's CGI, there's everything else, and having, in a way, in my opinion, you two in there just brings it back to reality in like whatever reality you're in. But yeah.
Yeah, it's not like it wouldn't exclude the concept of the actors, I don't think. You could have all three. So you could just have like an additional layer. That's what I was thinking. Is that what you're thinking?
Just to ground a little bit and just really understand, like, this is your storytelling and it's not something that you know of. It's like you're experiencing it. But or maybe have like a cameo in there. I don't know, like something like that really like ties it back to us, and we're like, oh, we believe in what you're saying because you're actually experiencing. On another level, I mean, Colors is great for us. I mean, at Dazed, it's like colorful, Gen Z, pop, music, great. Out of curiosity, like, what type of music would that be? Many things, what kind of music?
Many Things makes kind of very heavy techno, but I'd be working with her very specifically so that she's made a kind of purple song, and I'm trying to work with her to make it more purple and more colorful, basically. But usually it's very heavy techno, super cool, a little bit of acid in there as well.
Great. I mean, this is, I guess, like, yeah, it really resonates with our audience. I think Billie Eilish has synesthesia. She talked about it and everyone's like, oh my God. So I think it definitely resonates with our audience. And one last question is, at the beginning you started your pitch with illustrations. Are you thinking of including those at all?
Possibly. Yeah, there's probably a way of doing it. Again, if we're showing like moments of Rebecca getting ready, maybe Hyogo getting ready, we both have our art all around our house anyway, so that could probably be an element of it.
Yeah, that'd be great to get included in that. Just like to take us completely out of the film and into our own imagination and bring us back in the room with Rebecca and Hyogo. But yeah.
Thank you.
Cool. Yeah. I'll just chip in last. But great job. Really was struck by, again, the colours, and I echo what these guys are saying about making it a bit more personal, because I think that's going to be the hook that brings us in. I think say up top that it's a documentary, because I was waiting a little bit to know what it was that you wanted to make. And and sort of similarly to what Sylvia's saying, I was wondering about animation, because those illustrations are so beautiful, and this almost could be entirely in animation. I mean, there are so many options visually with it, but I think not to crowd it with too many elements. And animation is expensive, but 2D animation is probably going to be cheaper than CGI or something like that. So I would sort of consider your options visually and not try and do too much, but keep it to one or two like really strong elements. But yeah, I'm really curious to know more.
Thank you. I like the animation idea. That's cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. Some really interesting points for you to take away there. Next, we have Lily, American-born Taiwanese. Okay.
Thank you. Oh my gosh. Hello. My name is Lily Siegel, or Lily Ari Siegel. I'm here today to pitch you God, this sounds awful. American-born Taiwanese, which is a story about Joyce Lin. Next slide, please. So, how do you find your place in the world? I think everyone is thinking that, especially in COVID. But one thing that really interests me is intersectionality when I make films, kind of going back to my own personal journey. So Joyce is the child of Taiwanese immigrants who is contemplating the current status quo of Taiwan and rising tensions between Taiwan and China. So essentially she asks her dad, who immigrated to America, about his time during martial law and the change of Taiwanese politics since, and how she fits into all of that. Next slide, please. So a little bit more about Joyce and her dad, Wei Chen. Joyce is a gender-fluid artist/designer who works in Houston, Texas, and has exhibited internationally. Wei Chen is a doctor of oncology and at the Baylor University in Houston and immigrated to the United States in the 1980s. Yes. So essentially, the prompt of this is the COVID pandemic and the ongoing conflicts in Hong Kong and Ukraine to know more about the ins and outs of Taiwan. So Wei Chen recounts his childhood and early adulthood in Taiwan and like the dreams that he had for himself. Obviously, eventually he made it to America through education, but this really is an opportunity to bring like a side of the story from a Taiwanese perspective, not adulterated by American or Chinese politics around the situation. And then, but reflecting on that, Joyce kind of realizes or comes to the fact that being an Asian American is quite a interesting place to be in because you're kind of between these two worlds. You're not quite what people think of as an American, but not quite what people think of as being Taiwanese when you go visit. So there's a lot to unpack there. Next slide. So possible scenes. I don't know if everyone knows, but Houston is a large city in America. It's maybe the 4th largest in the US and rapidly growing. So there's a large Asian American community. This film will be reflecting the large community with the Asian night market and also visiting the Houston Contemporary Craft Center where Joyce had an artist residency, which kind of goes more into the contrast of Joyce's parents choosing to do medicine versus Joyce to be an artist. I think that might be another like point of being an immigrant or a child of immigrants. And then obviously food, because everyone loves food. And that's a huge part of Joyce's life is food and gathering around food. So lots of eating, cooking, and family dinners to have these conversations. So I'd like to say the access in this film is already secured with Joyce and Wei Chen. And I imagine the visual style to be quite composed, static, to really emphasize the spaces that Joyce and her family are taking up. And also to put in personal archive and historical archive. So, like, literally, why should I care about this? Because that's what I always think about things. Really, I want to elevate the intersectional identity of Asian Americans and as well as inform and enlighten about Taiwan's status quo. This will be a nuanced perspective to the immigrant and Taiwanese American experience. I would like to reiterate that I am not Taiwanese American, I am Korean American, but this story has a really personal place in my heart, and I really enjoy elevating other marginalized identities and other intersectional people. So if you have any questions or would like to chat with me afterwards, please say hi, because, yeah, would love to get to know everyone. Thank you.
Shall I go first? Yeah. Thank you so much. That was really interesting. And I think you're exploring some really fascinating themes in there with intersectional identity. And, you know, a sort of, I guess what I took away from this is the freedom that Joyce experiences being able to explore art and design and stuff like that, and how that differs to what her parents' experience was, especially if they used education to leave Taiwan. I wanted to ask a question about the narrative structure that you're imagining, because I couldn't quite see the film. I understand really clearly what you're trying to explore, but I just couldn't imagine how it would look. I know you've said where the scenes could be, but is it purely documentary? Are there any other aspects? What's the kind of visual language?
Yeah, so it would be like observational documentary, but kind of, which I forgot to mention, going off of like truffle hunters or some kind of heaven, quite composed shots. Yeah. And then some archive as well. And I guess about the structure, I was thinking of more of a 3-part structure. So the first part is kind of getting to know Joyce and her artistic craft. The second part being Wei Chen going into his life and history and his coming to America. And then Joyce now reflecting in the present and wondering, like, well, what do I do with this information?
Yeah, because I think there's a different approach you could take that it makes it that Joyce is representative of something that you're trying to explore. And that's going to be a bit tricky because you are just focusing on this one story. So from the outset, you've got to think of those sort of universal themes and how you make them land, using Joyce as an example rather than just doing what seems like a profile film of Joyce. Yeah.
Yeah.
How do you know Joyce?
So we met way back when, and now she's going far, far and beyond, and I'm here in London. Yeah, so we're friends from a while ago.
Right. I think for me, what was missing in your pitch was a sense of you and your connection to Joyce, and also just your background as a filmmaker, because I think that should be up top, and then say, I want to tell this story about, or I want to, do this observational documentary about Joyce because I want to, her story indicates all these themes I want to explore, and that's where our connection is. So I think that's what you could bring to it, because it's your film, and if we were to fund something, we're very much about who the filmmaker is and how we want to progress their career. So that's the most important thing in a way, or at least to start off with. And then you sort of, once I know who you are and your connection to the story, I'll be taken along. But yeah, well done.
Thanks. Yeah. I forgot to mention that I'm a recent grad.
Too modest.
Yeah. Of the National Film and Television School and directing documentary, and also a slam dance alum. Yikes.
I would just agree with Alice. I mean, I thought you did really well, and this is obviously a really artificial situation. Normally, if you're meeting us, you'd be meeting people one-to-one, but the bit that I was really sort of leaning forward for was when you were talking about why you wanted to make this film and what it means to you. And I think generally setting up who you are and then why you want to make the film and then telling us about the film, just it gives us this sort of the context and the sequence, the order that we need to fully absorb it all. One thing, again, I think you did really well, and this is a tough, situation to pitch in front of lots of people, but when you, and this goes for anyone, if you've got lots of text on the screen and you're talking, I'm sort of trying to listen to you and also thinking, should I be reading this? And so in the end, I sort of disregarded the slides so I could listen to you. But I think, I would love to see your film. I'm sorry we don't support short docs, but Doc Society's open at the moment. So
thank you.
Well, actually, this story really, really hits home. I'm not Taiwanese, but I'm Chinese, first generation. So a lot of the themes here resonate, and I understand the struggle of demanding Asian communist parents. I guess one thing that I was really curious about was the length of the documentary, because there's a lot of topics that you're trying to cover, like Taiwan and the relationship between Taiwan and China, and then the obviously Joyce being gender fluid as well. That's also a topic that, in East Asian communities quite special, because I don't know per se personally anyone who's going through that kind of understanding your own identity, and there's that, and then there's food, which obviously is a massive staple in our culture. I guess there's a lot of things you want to say a lot, but I guess I just wanted to know, is there one thing that you want to concentrate on that we can just hook onto? Because otherwise it's a documentary that's like an hour, 2 hours long. No, I know, but that's fine. Yeah.
I guess, well, the desired length would always be like 15 minutes because I feel like that's a good length for a short doc. I would say what I'm most interested in, because obviously there's a lot of stuff, but what I'm most interested in is the generational and the immigration aspect between her and her parents and the family dynamic. I think it's great that Joyce is gender fluid, but it's kind of a just happenstance rather than a topic. And then also, I think her art is also amazing, but also it's happenstance, not the main topic. Perhaps those could be other films.
Thank you. Yeah.
I do agree. I think you need to, if it's 15 minutes, I think that's way too much to include. So you'd got to refine it down, for sure.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lily. Okay, let's move swiftly on to Ornelia.
Hello. Oh, hello. Hello. I'm nervous. I'm Ornella Matoni, and I'm a Rwandan Londoner who's worked in TV for 5 years on documentaries and factual, but this is the first documentary that I am directing for a story that's close to my heart, based in Rwanda, but I have my producers here who I'll introduce.
Hi everyone, my name's Claire. I am an award-winning documentary filmmaker and producer. I am currently working on a short film which is Guardian and BFI funded, so I'm hoping that this one will have a similar impact. So I am really excited to be working on 1,000 Hills Between Us. It's a story that's close to topics that I'm interested in. I studied international relations and with a focus on justice, and I also studied anthropology. And so I'm really excited to be working on this film.
Hi everyone, my name's Leia. I'm a documentary filmmaker, and I've worked in TV, film, production and commercials for about 4 years. I'm really interested in telling raw and intimate stories which need to be heard. I met Ornella at NFTS directing the documentary film course last year and was really drawn to this story, and especially the theme of forgiveness and resilience.
Next slide. So this story begins in the country where I'm from. I left Rwanda when I was 6 months old because I'm a survivor of the genocide. And as a survivor who never got to grow up there, I was always intrigued by how people rebuilt their lives. And so every time I'd go back and visit family, and I would ask my uncle, especially, who was one of the founders of the restorative justice process, how have people, forgiven each other? How are survivors and perpetrators living side by side? And yeah, I'm still flabbergasted that they essentially are. So at the start of this year, I decided to go on a 6-week research trip to discover what does it mean to be reconciled and who is really reconciled. So how do you heal a people divided by genocide? When I was in Rwanda in January, I met Emmeline, whose resilience and tireless work to help heal her community inspired the film 1,000 Hills Between Us. In the rolling hills of Rwanda, 30 years after the genocide that claimed the lives of her family, community healer Emmeline searches for meaning as she bridges the divide between perpetrators, survivors, and the children born of violence. Next slide. So the film is about Emmeline, who is this incredible mother of 4, really empathetic character who lost her whole family during the genocide and has since made her life mission to help other people heal. But she does this because she's also struggling with her own sense of guilt and survivor's guilt and her own understanding of why she's the only surviving member of her family. So Emmeline opens up her home to survivors and perpetrators and their children to basically set down the pain they carry and build bridges of healing and solidarity. Next slide. So the people on this research trip that I was most interested in when I was doing this research was the people who were born from rape. A lot of these people have been forgotten in this reconciliation process that the country has undergone. And so the film will observe Emmeline working with these young people who are often struggling with their own sense of belonging because they are these uncomfortable reminders of violence and shame that their family experienced. And so with rare empathetic grace, Emmeline helps them and herself find meaning and connection.
So the film will be set during the genocide's commemoration period, which is April next year, which will be a really difficult time, an intense time for people of Rwanda. They will experience a variety of emotions as people still hold on to the fear that the 1944 violence that took place will divide the country once more. The film will most likely be about 20 minutes as a short documentary. Next slide, please.
So just a bit about the schedule and development process. Because this is going to be filmed next spring, we are currently just beginning the funding process. So we'll be filming next year, and then the release will be the year after that in 2024, which is the 30th anniversary of the genocide. Could I have the next slide, please? So we want to end with why this film is so important to make now. Obviously, this is an event that's been covered many times, but the themes are still incredibly important. We can see now the violence that continues in our world, the need for reconciliation, and so, this will explore the way that people have been able to break these cycles of violence and intergenerational trauma.
We want to tell the story because rape is now being used more commonly as a weapon of war, and young people born from violence are often being forgotten about. In many cultures, they are still unfairly stigmatized for their very existence.
And we want to make this film because there's still so much we can learn from Rwanda, a country that has had to undergo the most extreme forms of healing in recent times. And we want to share this story so that the global audience can experience the profound resilience of the human spirit through the eyes of Emmeline. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and sorry again for getting your name wrong, Ornella. Thank you. Over to you guys. Do you have any takeaways, any pointers, or just general feedback? Okay.
Thanks so much, guys. That was really interesting and definitely something that I can imagine would work for the Guardian platform. We're always trying to sort of find ways to speak about genocide, and I think the 30-year anniversary is like a really clear hook that makes perfect sense in an editorial sense, and that's something that, like, I know it's different with different platforms and where things get screened in the end, but with The Guardian, because we publish all of our documentaries online, that would be like a really clear, okay, you can put an article with it and you can like investigate the situation in depth. I wanted to ask a bit about, so we have this dilemma with sort of news documentaries, I think, sometimes where you want to presume some understanding of something, but you can't presume too much knowledge, and you want to sort of encourage people to understand the situation without making them feel like stupid, like why didn't I know about that thing? So how will you sort of set the basics of actually what happened in the genocide against the Tutsis?
Yes, good question. So one of the reasons we want to do it in the commemoration period is because that is exactly a time where the whole of Rwanda feels what happened that time in '94, and so I want people to, I guess, see it through what the characters will be speaking and how they're feeling in that time versus filming it in November, where whilst they're still healing, they're getting on with their everyday lives. So that was hopefully the thing that could explain or take people to 1994 in a way.
So you'd shoot it in like April and then you'd publish it the next year in April?
Yeah.
And that would be the 30th anniversary?
Yes.
Oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. Because I just think that's a really important sort of basic bit of info that you need to set the scene so people understand. I mean, a lot of people like who might be watching it were not born then and don't have a recollection of sort of what happened.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my feedback. Thank
Cool,
you.
I've got something to say. I would just say, I think you guys nailed the pitch, by the way. You introduced yourselves and sort of your background really, really well. I liked seeing your relationship. And you also, one of the things that often comes up in these kinds of pitches is, why does this film need to be made now? You totally nailed that as well, given that you've got such a clear hook in the 30th anniversary. My question, and I don't know if this is just your, where you are in your careers, but like, have you thought about making this a longer film? Like, could this be a feature? It feels like there's a lot to say, and with all the background of what happened, I'm sure you can make a 20-minute version, but like, do you see length beyond that?
Yeah, I've definitely grappled with that. And getting carried away with all the things that could happen in a feature. And there's so many stories in Rwanda where the journey is there and you'd want to be there for a long period of time. I think because I would like to get it done by 2024, and because it's my first documentary, independent documentary directing, I was like, maybe this is realistic. But I appreciate you saying that, because I definitely think about that.
Cool, thank you.
Thank you so much. That looks so interesting. I really want to see it. And I guess also, first of all, I love the relationship you guys have, and I think it's so important to have, when you make a film as a director, it's not just you, and having really good producers and a really good team that supports you, especially telling a story that might be painful personally to you and going through is really important. I guess one thing I was wondering, maybe you didn't include in the pitch, but have you guys thought about safeguarding, any type of structure for safeguarding, just in case, because it's such a, when you're bringing people on board on this this kind of project, it's important. It's just something to think about, and make sure that everyone comes out of it, healed, as you want the audience to be.
Yeah, we actually haven't had those conversations yet, but they would definitely be conversations to be had, especially because this is so personal to me, and being there, a lot of things come up as well. So yeah, definitely we'll be exploring that 100% more.
Hey, so yeah, great job to all of you. I thought the pitch was really well structured and presented. I wanted to ask now, are you going to be in this yourself, like a character, or your voice, or?
Yeah, I've also thought about that, but at the moment, the idea is to let Emmeline guide the story and the young people, be kind of echoing that. But I am thinking about it. I'm not opposed to it, but at the moment, no. But it's a good point.
I've got another question. When you crew this, will you be using local, DOP and stuff like that? And I think that would be a really important thing to consider. If not,
yeah, no, that's the aim. I hope to find a good local DOP that has the same vision in mind.
I think another thing I kind of thought maybe could come across a bit more is the visual style of the documentary. Obviously, because of the story that it's telling, the historical events it's presenting, it's I can see it's kind of perfect fit for The Guardian and tying it to a news story. Hope that helps. That little so that's kind of where I expected to see it, but I kind of wanted to be told that, or told what is the visual style, how's it going to be shot? Is it more observational, following Emmeline, or is there a more stylized version of this, which could also exist? But it seems like there's so much to tell in the events that you don't really want that. You don't want to. Why can't I think of a better phrase than tart it up? But I sort of had to draw that conclusion myself. So it'd just be great to know your interest and sensibility as a filmmaker, what your I guess style of filmmaking is. I think that was something I was curious about as well.
Yeah, I guess my background is a lot of obs docs, so I also want to explore that and make it observational, because in Rwanda so much I feel is is in the body language and is in what is people's reactions in the rooms. But then also we really want people to see the visual beauty of Rwanda, which I think has so much to do with how people are living side by side, because they're surrounded by all of this and they work on the land. And so we really want it to be like this kind of juxtaposition of like this beauty and also these like really then, this beauty outdoors, but then these really intimate, tense, like observational moments like inside the houses and inside the rooms where people are, dealing with their history.
Thank you. And were those your photos that you took when you were out there? Because
no, they're not.
They were really nice.
Oh, sorry, no, yes, of Emmeline, yes, those were that was mine. Thank you.
Thank you. We have 2 people left to pitch, and we have Olivia with Glory.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I'm a director and I live in London, and I wanted to tell you guys about my short film project, Glory. Next slide. So ever since I've been a little girl, like 10, 11, the one thing that I really wanted was to fall in love. I've always, I was always obsessed with the idea of romance and finding that one true love, and I've consumed a lot of that through books and a lot of film. And I think that's really influenced the work that I do as an artist, and almost fed that longing that I have for love in both my work and my personal life. Ironically, it's also the one thing that I always felt like escaped me. It wasn't until my late 20s that I got to experience my first romantic connection, and to be honest, it kind of sucked. A lot of the butterflies came with a massive lesson on self-worth that I don't think I could have gotten without that experience. And all of that has inspired my short film, Glory, which in the only way I could kind of define it is like a coming-of-age tale on the thrill and disillusion of first love. In my story, Glory, who's a late bloomer, has like a pretty mundane life, living with her mom and working in the local supermarket, where she started this secret relationship with a younger coworker, Iggy. They share a lot of really intimate moments and experience a lot of firsts together behind closed door. Because in public, Iggy spent a lot of his time ignoring Glory and trying to keep the relationship private. Next slide, please. And trying to keep the relationship private. And through that relationship, Glory kind of has to navigate that and realize that like her quest for love comes with a lot of like pain, disappointment, and self-discovery. And she also kind of wonder whether this is all worth it. Next slide. And next. My protagonist, Glory, I imagine her to be this soft-spoken, kind of naive, late bloomer person. She's not really good at confrontation, which doesn't make a relationship with people easy. She observes a lot, and a lot of interaction are just mainly people at work. And Iggy represents the opposite of that, because he's got the friends and the social circle and all of that. She loves music, and especially music from like the early 60s. She loved the fashion from that time, so we really see that in the way that she presents herself, which also kind of contribute to making her like, someone that is a bit not fitting in, which is really hard and different from other people her age. One thing that really kind of stunted her emotional growth was also losing her dad when she was 17. So in the film, there's a sense of Glory being stuck in that teenage 17, 18 era, because that's like when her trauma happened, and that's also what makes her so vulnerable to relationship with someone like Iggy. Next slide. Next. And Iggy, who is a walking red flag, is the opposite of Glory. He represents everything that she thinks she wants. You know, he's young, carefree, he's always around his friend, but on the inside, he's also has his own set of insecurity and feelings of like not fitting in, which is very similar to Glory, and which is something that they have in common. Next slide. Next. Another kind of silent witness of this story is Betty, Glory's mom, who, after losing her husband, like all those years ago, she's kind of like checked out of life. So she spent a lot of time just kind of sitting on her plastic cover couch and watching all those like church services and not really interacting with her daughter or anyone else, which contribute to kind of the emotional void that Glory feels and also make her even more vulnerable. Next. When it comes to the setting of my film, it's happening in current time. And I see it happening in kind of like Enfield / Middlesex area. I'm really intentional about wanting to create this like soft pastel colored universe for Glory that really relate to kind of like her being still a teenager in her head, sorry, and also just pay homage to like her dreamy, melancholic kind of persona, and then that 60s vibes that she loves so much. I really want to reflect that on the production design in the shop that she walks in with the type of product in her room, this like light pink tones, but also she's an immigrant kid, so there's gonna be palm oil bottles in the kitchen, plastic on the couch. Next. And next. When it comes to the visual and cinematography, I really want something really intimate. I want us to feel like we're in there with Glory and we're really close and experiencing all those first things with her. I want it to be lit for black skin in a way that is both soft but also beautiful and accurate. Because I felt like growing up as a kid, a black kid that loved certain film, it was always hard to love things but like not really see myself in there. So when I started writing this with my co-writer Lily, I knew that I wanted to write a story about love, intimacy, disappointment, like a simple story that I could relate to and that will include people that look like me. So that's where Glory came about. Things like sound will also be like a massive thing because I think the silence will be really important. The music will be really important. The first thing that we did when we first started writing was to put together a playlist with just like songs that helped me when I was going through my stuff or stuff that like I feel like define the mood of Glory and that can help people see and have kind of like a glimpse of what her and my world and get a sense of what the film will feel like. And then next. So that's just like details about my influences. There was a lot of like Kerry James Marshall painting, who is like an American painter that I think is really great at depicting that like mundane black life, kind of away from like the narrative around discrimination or racial trauma, but just like simple story that are like melancholic, romantic, and beautiful. And it's something that I really wanted to give you a feel of. And yeah, that's kind of it. There's a next slide, but it's like playlist and all of that, and I'll be happy to share with anyone. That's it. Thank you.
I'll go first. I loved that. I loved as well how you kind of were obviously listening to our feedback and kind of skipping past the text because you told us everything we needed to know. I thought the choice of artwork was brilliant. You talked really well about the characters, which, you know, for a fiction short, that's kind of the essence of your story. So I thought it was brilliant. And how you described them in a sort of very distinctive way, like saying the guy was a red flag, like you sort of brought us in with humour and your kind of personal. You started off in a sort of personal way, and were very relaxed in presenting. So yeah, well done.
Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think you're completely charming, and your deck was really beautifully put together. And as Alice says, I feel like I can see the film. The way that you speak about it gives me great hope for how the script is going to feel when I read it. So my only thing is like practical. Like, how do we help you? How much do you need? Have you applied for the BFI fund? All of those questions, which would come up in the conversation anyway. But have you applied for the BFI Network Fund?
I haven't actually. I just finished development program where we kind of ended up with the first draft of the script.
Right.
And we were tempted to apply for it, but I just didn't feel like we were ready. So we did this development program, and I felt more confident now, sending it around and getting feedback. So, yeah.
Well, please, I'd love to be in touch with you and everyone afterwards. So we'll follow up.
Amazing.
Yeah, I thought that was really interesting, really beautifully put together as well. And I could really imagine the scenes so clearly, which is really, really nice. I'd say the same thing. I think there's some practical details missing, that this isn't something that The Guardian would go for, just because it's not like in the right sort of realm for us. But I'd still like to know what sort of length are you thinking, other practical details like that.
Yeah. More like 15. At first I was like pushing for 20, but everyone is telling me that no festival we play past 15. So we kind of stick, and it's gonna be really like a moment of that relationship. So probably like just like 2 days of their interaction. But I'm happy to, share like my version of the script now and the deck, and just tell you guys more.
Yeah, really, really beautiful deck. Love the references. I guess one thing I felt like I would have liked to see is just like a story arc, like the beginning, middle, and end. Okay. Like how obviously everything here like makes sense, and it just feels like a bit floaty. And I just want to know like what she's gonna go through, what Glory, what kind of the like little dramatic moments throughout the film to get me hooked.
Oh, okay. They're without spoiling everything, but it's just it happened in a moment in the film where they've already started the relationship. So one thing that happened is like they share this big moment of intimacy, which is the first for Glory, and she thinks that that's gonna make the relationship more valid. And the next day, Iggy is kind of like back to ignoring her, and then she sees that he's really different with like his friends, and so he's able to be public with people, but just not with her. And that's when she kind of make the decision to like, maybe this is not the right thing for me. And there's also something in the background where like she start interacting with her mom a little bit, which in the film we never really see her until the end. And as she mend that relationship, she also realized that like, okay, maybe I need to let this one go. So yeah, that's kind of it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Glory. Okay, last but definitely not least, we have Emily with Get a Grip. Yeah. And sorry, I didn't have your name written down. So. Danielle as well. Okay.
I appreciate we're last, so we won't take up too much more of your guys' time.
Also, it might look like we're shaking, but it's just because we're really cold.
I was going to say that. Yeah. So yeah, this is really loud. Straight off the top, I'll just say this is a short narrative film. We're looking about 15 minutes. I had the luck of seeing everybody else go first, so next slide, please, if that's okay. So we thought we'd just start by introducing ourselves. So I'm Emily, and I'm a Cannes Lion and D&AD award-winning commercial director, and some of my clients included Facebook, Universal Music, and the United Nations, to name a few.
Hey guys, I'm Danny. I'm a producer. I've been working in production for about 10 years now, making commercials, content, music videos, and more recently short films. A short film I made a couple of years ago, Limbo, was selected for London Short Film Festival, and more recently I've made a short film starring Gemma Arterton, which is in post-production. Hopefully I'll be doing festival circuits next year.
Next slide, please. So I'd like to just start off by telling you a bit about the experience that inspired this screenplay. About a year ago, I tried using the Meta Quest 2 VR headset. This hardware that is used to access the metaverse works by reading your hands and translating them into the digital world. The idea behind this design is to make the experience as immersive as possible for the user. But something that I appreciate, I'm quite small standing up here, but you may or may not have noticed about me is that I have a limb difference, so my hands are not the same. To cut what could otherwise be quite a long story short, I can confirm that the experience that I had inside the metaverse was indeed very immersive. So I found myself inhabiting a body that wasn't my own, in a way that I can only really describe as dysmorphic. The digital hands that I was given were designed to look identical, unlike my own, and the software itself simply couldn't compute the body it was being presented with. As a result, I found myself completely incapacitated and unable to access the metaverse. It was then a matter of months later that Facebook, who I did mention were one of my clients before, but it was then a matter of months later that Facebook announced it would be changing its name to Meta and that the metaverse would be at the forefront of the company's future. So it's within this context that I came to write our film. Next slide, please. Get a Grip tells the story of a young woman who navigates the world differently. As someone born with a limb difference, constantly adapting comes naturally to Peggy until one day it doesn't. The switch looms near as the world prepares to enter a new digital age, with VR headsets due to become the primary interface for our lives online. Inspired by true events, our film tells the story of a future that is already being written. One where technological advances threaten to exclude those whose bodies don't conform to code. Next slide, please. The metaverse is currently being positioned as a future that goes beyond imagination to create a world open to everyone. And that's a quote taken from Meta's website, hence I did the little kind of thing. Though consumers aren't clamoring to access virtual reality just yet, from my position within the advertising industry, I know that the funding is definitely there. And where there's Silicon Valley investment, I think there's a degree of inevitability in a product success. So whether or not accessibility may be implemented down the line is not something that I'm personally hoping to leave to chance. Next slide, please. If there's one vision that sits at the heart of this film, it is to give the viewer the understanding of what it feels like to inhabit a differently abled body. So taking inspiration from the first-person perspective that is ubiquitous to VR and gaming, we want our cinematographic choices to compel people to question whether our current approach to tech futurism is inclusive enough. Actually, I'll just add here, our cinematographer, a man who is fabulous, is currently working on an exciting kind of rig that will enable us to be really agile in our approach to filming. So next slide, please. The future of virtual reality really is boundless, and so I'm excited to say that we'll be working with an incredible digital artist called Sarah Ann Banks. This is some of her work that you can see here on the left. Is that the left? Yeah. Her vibrant style brings to life the tantalizing future our protagonist finds herself face to face with, making the realization that she's unable to access this space all the more painful. Ultimately, I really believe that technology has the power to be at the forefront of accessibility for the disabled community. So this isn't a film about bashing big tech. It's about creating a space for change to be heard and ultimately, hopefully, giving the future a bit of a nudge in the right direction. So I'll hand over to Danielle just to talk a bit about the production process and where we're at.
I feel like you can tell that we rehearsed this to get it in time, because that was so succinct, so well done them. In terms of where we're at, so obviously we're kind of early pre-production. Again, going last, bit of an advantage. We have applied for BFI funding, along with several other of the funding bodies. But we're kind of, cruising ahead as you do with shorts, and assuming it'll all come together. So we've got a lot of our heads of department already in place, which is very exciting, people that are already kind of committed to the project. And then in terms of supporters as well, we've been really fortunate. We've kind of plundered our networks and friends, and we've got limb difference charity Reach, who are financially supporting us and just kind of helping us across the whole development of the project. Code, where I work, have allowed us to produce through them, which is obviously amazing. Zebedee, a really great casting agency, are going to help us cast our hero character, and Panavision have kindly said they will do us a no-charge deal, so we get all our kit for free. So again, all amazing and exciting things that make this feel like it's, you know, very, very much a reality. I think another thing that me and Em just wanted to touch on, you kind of already did, Em, but it's just that we're also simultaneously just thinking a lot about the sort of PR plan for this film. I think what's important is, you know, everyone's kind of touched on why, and you guys have mentioned why stories are important to be told. And obviously the takeaway from this film is very much that we feel this can be like a catalyst for change, and, you know, this stuff is being developed as we speak. So I think we're thinking kind of in parallel to production about how and where we want this film to be seen. Obviously, we'd love it to do the kind of typical festival circuits, but I think there's huge kind of tech spaces and disability spaces where this could also make a real kind of be a real kind of catalyst for conversation. So we're already kind of reaching out to lots of people in the tech industry, in the A-tech industry, and the disability networks to make sure this film kind of goes far and wide and successfully changes the future of tech. That's the intention. So ambitious, but we're going to go for it. So yeah, that's us. Thank you.
I'm going to go first, I guess. Well done. I think you guys did really, really well. It's not easy to go last. I think it's probably harder than going first. But you were listening to everyone else's notes. You nailed the pitch. I'm really interested to see the project. I was going to say, you know, that I'm sure there are going to be tons of bodies and organisations who are interested in what you're trying to say and what you're doing. And have you thought about getting in touch with them? But you've already said that you have. So good luck with all of your funding efforts. I'd like to find out what happens next. I'd like to see your film.
Thank you.
I'll go next. That was really interesting. Thank you so much, and a really insightful pitch and sort of unique perspective that I hadn't really considered, but now I've seen it, I'm sort of like, oh my God, I'm going to go away definitely thinking about this for a long time. I was wondering what your sort of ideal vision of a launch plan was. I know that you said, you know, you want to have screenings here and there and blah, 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 but online specifically, and I think across social media, do you have any thoughts about the best sort of impact campaign you could develop?
In all honesty, no. I don't know if... Yes. Maybe Danielle should have the mic for this one. Danielle did mention Reach. They're actually the UK's leading limb difference charity. And so I think this is something that we're in early stage conversations with them about how this could be a launch pad for a campaign that they then take, as that were. But yeah, I think it would be something that would be great to get people's expertise on and ideas as to how we could really make the most out of what this film has to say, as Danielle said, beyond kind of the film circuit.
Cool, thanks.
Yeah, great job. Really well pitched. I think for me, if you hadn't told me up front that it was a narrative doc, I would have assumed it was a documentary, just because of, you know, you've got that unique perspective and experience that you're talking about. So if it's going to be a narrative short, I kind of want to know a bit more about the story itself, because I think it could work brilliantly as a documentary as well. I don't know if you've considered that, but just a little bit more about why you've chosen to go the narrative route rather than the documentary route. But yeah, great job.
Thank you. I guess in terms of going the narrative route, we've had a couple of pitches today where I think, you know, there's been a lot of inspired by a personal experience or a personal story, and I think I really wanted to take the opportunity to just slightly heighten the stakes within our narrative, because obviously right now this is an emerging space, and it's about how can we, you know, raise awareness for this issue in a context that will actually reach the right people. So I think by narrativizing this, I'm quite excited to explore this idea that we may be later down the line in this switchover. So I think in the synopsis, it was mentioned there's this sort of idea of a switch, and again, we have not got a lot of time, so I didn't go into huge amounts of details about the actual sort of narrative arc, but the idea there is that that's kind of inspired by the digital switchover that happened about 10 years ago when we all had to chuck our analog TVs in the bin and have digital TVs, and so it's sort of really about just heightening those stakes, like everyone's laptops and computers are no longer going to be the interface for online, and I think that was played a big part in why I was quite excited to narrativize it as opposed to have it be a documentary. Yeah,
it's great, and I haven't actually seen that, I don't think, in a narrative short before. So I love that angle. I think it's really unique and specific. And I guess, in a pitch like this, I would, as Jordan said earlier, it's a conversation. So you're tantalizing me with just the overview, and then I can follow up and ask more specifically about the story and the characters and everything. But yeah, well done.
Thank you so much for this. Can I just say I really like that your notes match the color scheme of red and white.
Yeah, I noticed that too.
I'm like, that's really great. Consistency. I guess, amazing. I think the metaverse, that's such a central conversation that we have at Dazed, and it's like all that very future facing forward, and also bringing in a bit of political and social political angle to it. I think I was wondering, will you be thinking, or is there any sort of goal to maybe include what is the aspect ratio, as in and would you be including some form of VR that goes with it to really make it as an experience for the audience? I think the approach of taking the VR approach was something that, because this has been a fairly iterative process. The experience happened a year ago, and there have been several drafts along the way. And I think that the idea of making the experience an immersive one, a VR experience, is a really exciting one. I think it's a huge piece of the puzzle here is the medium that I'm more familiar working in. But I think, if there was funding, there's nothing to say that we couldn't add an actually immersive experience alongside the film experience. I think it will reach more audiences as a film. It also wouldn't reach people like me if it was a VR experience, because we wouldn't be able to use the headsets and stuff. So I guess there's that too. But I think it would be interesting to explore how we might be able to tack on, as it were, or tessellate different ways of kind of raising awareness and telling the story. So thank you.
Thank you for going last and for patiently waiting. So that concludes our open mic pitch. I want to say thank you to everyone that pitched. It's not easy to get up here, and you articulated your ideas with such precision and personality, and it was really amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you to the audience for sitting patiently. I know it's cold. And last but not least, thank you to our commissioners for all the insightful advice. I think everyone in this room can take away something from what you've said today. Okay, guys, so we have 10 minutes before our next discussion, which is Get It Done. It's how to get your film off the ground. It's the panel discussion. To the left, there's a cafe where you can get hot drinks, some food, and to the right, there's the lounge area where you can get a drink and just mingle and maybe approach some of the commissioners here. Thank you so much. And a last round of applause for everyone that pitched today. Well done.